then your Saturday night can be a bit of a bitch.
Saturday night is the loneliest night in the week.
Well, it doesn't have to be. Load up Toxic Radio every Saturday night for the heavy metal happy hour with the one and only Fishman.
I know that, dude.
There will be interviews, ticket giveaways, a little bit of banter with Toxic Mike, and of course great metal from the 80s all the way through today. Starts at 7 p.m., runs until Fish says it's over.
Everyone get out!
Catch it only on Toxic Radio. Don't play it safe. Play it toxic. While you're rocking with us at Toxic Radio, don't forget to check us out on social media.
I want details, and I want them right now.
Follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook.
Now you're talking, brother.
Chat with us, keep up on news. Just don't make it weird. Don't be a stalker. Don't be that guy.
You just want to suck the joy out of everything.
Toxic Radio. Get infected. Hey guys, dating life gone pretty shitty?
I find you so creepy, I think you should have to walk around with a bell around your neck.
Finding yourself getting a little desperate for some female companionship?
Alexa, tell me you love me.
Hell no. You disgust me.
What you need is to upgrade your style right now. The Toxic Store's got exactly what you need. Pick up some stylish gear featuring Deviant Gamer, Toxic Radio, and the Heavy Metal Happy Hour.
Oh, yeah!
You can find the store through the Toxic Radio app or toxicradio.net. Get in the game.
Do I make you horny, baby?
Get yourself a little love.
That guy's getting boobies.
Yeah, he is.
Toxic Radio and the Toxic Store. Don't buy it safe. Buy it toxic.
Welcome to Paradelphia Radio. This is Rick Pruitt once again coming to you from the brand spanking new Toxic Studios in downtown. Where the hell are we, Mike? Blackwood, Gloucester Township.
We are in.
You put this place in like a no man's land.
It is a huge debate of whether it's Laurel Springs or Clementon. So that debate has been going on for years. I'm going to say Clementon because screw everybody else. But no, we're in Clementon, New Jersey. Yes, in the finally polished, finally made, finally tuned new studios that I've spent a lot of time here. I was just saying to you earlier, I've slept here a few times already to make sure everything is tip-top shape. And every time you come here, there's something new.
There is. You got the new padding up here in the walls in the insane asylum that we call the studio.
That it's very much so for that reason. I think we're just about out of upgrades to make, so it's pretty much what you see is what you get. But I'm very proud and happy of it, and I'm glad that you and the guys, when they do come in with you, like Doug and hopefully Jenna be again one day. I mean, she's home taking care of the baby. Enjoy coming in and using the facilities because this was moving on up from what we had before. So very exciting.
I'll tell you what, you got the heat lamp working here. I'm going to bring some copper tone next time. Good God, man.
I need to make sure that everybody sees every ounce of your being because, I mean, if there's somebody here that needs to be on television, it's you. You've got a face for television, yes.
Do I?
You're going to be the next influencer like the Kardashians. You're going to be the next JT, Justin Timberlake.
Really?
Yes.
I got to work on my dance moves. All right, well, enough of that nonsense.
That's what the beginning of the show always has to be, a little bit of nonsense, before we get into the real meat.
The real meat and potatoes, which we got coming up here because we do have a guest here tonight. He is Mr. Rob Gutro. He is he's a scientist. He's actually a medium and a paranormal investigator. He's written multiple books, including his Pets and the Afterlife series, in which he describes his understanding of and communication with deceased pets, including a few of his own fur children who have passed. Rob is a huge advocate for animal rescue and adoption, And again, he is here with us tonight on Paradelphia. Welcome, Rob.
Well, thank you, Rick. Good to be here. Thanks for having me tonight.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, this is a topic that we listen. You and I have had conversations over the last couple weeks here, and you know how many animals we have in our home. So I could do a show like this every other week and not get tired of it. This is my bread and butter.
Excellent. Well, there's a lot to talk about when it comes to pets on the other side and this side.
Absolutely, absolutely. So now you are a pet medium, but I've heard you say this a few times in other interviews. You are a pet medium, but you are not a pet communicator. So right off the bat, can we get a definition and describe what exactly the difference is between the two?
Sure. Well, I'm actually just a medium, a regular medium. I communicate with pets and people, but pets have my heart. So the difference between a pet medium and an animal communicator is that pet mediums can only communicate with pets of the past. Animal communicators can communicate with live animals, and they can figure out what behavior problems they have and why they have their behavior problems. And they can also assess things that happen in their past life that lead them to behave the way they do.
Interesting.
So I don't have that gift. I just talk to people and pets who passed.
Okay. So how did this all start for you? Like this, I'm always interested whenever we talk to a medium, because I can only imagine this had to be some kind of shocking revelation at some point in your life that you were seeing these people and or animals that or hearing them that other people couldn't see and hear.
Yeah, the very first time it was quite shocking. I was actually a teenager, and my granddad had passed away in December of 1976, and it was about 7 months later. I was home. It was in the summertime. It turned out it was in July. I was by myself, with the family dog, and he, 2 rooms away, he visibly appeared in that room in full color, and he was standing there. And he didn't say anything because I didn't give him a chance to. I grabbed that dog and I ran outside.
See, that's an honest response, because normally I talk to mediums and they're just like blasé about it. Like, yeah, grandma just appeared and I continued to whip the potato salad or whatever. Like, I'd be so far out the door. Like, what the hell, man?
I was quite frightened. And I have to tell you, Rick, I sat outside for hours until my parents came home. And when they finally came home, they said, "Why are you and the dog sitting outside?" And I told them. And the good thing about it is that I could be very honest with my mom and dad. And my mother told me then that she had that ability, but she was afraid to use it.
Okay.
So it was inherited, and only I received it. My 2 brothers did not.
Interesting. Yeah, that was going to be my next question, was whether this was something hereditary, which apparently it is. So you said she was afraid to use it, but is that something you can turn off and on and decide when and if you use it?
Well, she could. I mean, let me just tell you this. My mother was Italian. She was very stubborn. So if she didn't want anything, she would just push it away. I didn't get that part, but so what happened with her is that her mom passed away, and after her mom passed away, she clearly heard her mother call her name in her ear. And my mother said that frightened her so much that she blocked everything out. And usually when spirits will come through on the other side and they frighten you, they won't come back because they don't want to frighten you. They actually want to comfort you. Mm-hmm. So that's what happened. And, as I found out later too, that my mother's father had the ability and my mother's cousin had the ability.
Oh, wow. Yeah. That's what I've heard that about. We have a medium that we, is part of our crew here named Jean Durkin. Excuse me. And she, has the same situation. I believe it was her mother too. It's maternal through her family. And her daughter actually has, both of her daughters actually have different versions of the gift. One of her daughters, I believe, can see, and the other daughter can hear, clear audio and clear, is it visual, or I don't know what the clairs are, but whatever that is, whatever that's called. So it's interesting that it goes down family lines like that. So now, when this happens to you, whether it's an animal or a person, how does this normally manifest for you? Is it visual, or is it audio, or both, or some combination?
Well, it depends on the situation, but mostly it's telepathic. It's in my head. And what's interesting is that I belong to a paranormal investigation group called Inspired Ghost Tracking in Maryland, and when we go into homes to do investigations about people who stay behind as earthbound ghosts, I'm actually able to see them in my mind, and I carry a book with me and I sketch them out.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and it's been an interesting experience because so far everybody I've sketched out, the homeowner has said that's who they have seen walking through their house.
That's good validation cool. Right there. Yeah.
Yeah.
So when you have this happen in that way, and because I know this is what I guess me listening to a show like this, my first thought would be, well, how do you know that isn't your own mind playing tricks, or you just thinking that you're hearing it, but it's your own mind saying, you know what I'm saying? Like how can you distinguish that from an actual interaction?
That's a good question. And I had to actually figure that out when my abilities reawakened. So just to preface that, so after I had that experience as a teenager, I only had a couple of experiences in between, and I really didn't pay attention to them. But when my puppy passed, Buzz, who's a Weimaraner, in 2005, he reawakened my abilities. So I wrote everything down that he showed me, and then I wanted to prove to myself that I was really getting messages from other people and pets. And so we went to historic mansions in this area where we live. And I would go in and I would try and sense to see who was there. And whenever I would get something, I would go talk to the house historian, and they would prove exactly who I connected to.
Interesting.
So, yeah.
Interesting. So you said your puppy Buzz, who passed away, reawakened this in you. Did you ever find out if that was for a specific purpose, whether it was through the dog letting you know or someone else letting you know? Like why then, why him, why that situation?
All I know is that his life's purpose was to be here for a short time to provide me the ability to help countless people around the world find comfort by giving them messages from their pets from the other side.
Yeah.
So Buzz's short life of 7 months had a tremendous purpose that has restored hope and countered grief from a lot of people.
Yeah, I read that story in your book. That's rough. My God, I can't even imagine.
Yeah, as a pet parent, and you never forget. You never forget a pet. You never forget the loss either. But it doesn't mean that you can't move past it.
Right.
They are always in your heart. And
right.
The reason I wrote these books, the Pets in the Afterlife books, is to teach people how to recognize all the different ways that pets can communicate, whether they're using, whether they're appearing visibly, whether they're making noises like nails on the floor, whether they're barking or meowing from what sounds like another room, or even social media. There's a story in Pets 3 where a dog uses social media with the help of somebody on the other side.
That's cool.
So there's many ways.
All right. So now with pets, it seems like they are creatures that live moment to moment. They don't really seem to have an agenda. They don't really worry too much about the past. They are very much in the moment when they are here. So that being the case, you mentioned a few times in your book how sometimes pets will know that it is their time, or their time is coming. Is that something that they do in fact know ahead of time? Like, do they know they're only supposed to be here 8 years, 7 months, 15 years, whatever it may be, and they prepare for the end and they kind of know that's coming? Or is that as much of a shock to them as it is to us when they get sick or whatever happens?
Well, there's two parts to the answer there. Number one is before any of us come here, we know how long we're going to live, pretty much. And number two, often it is a surprise to us because we don't have any memory of what we knew before we came here.
Right.
But pets, as they get older, they really have a good sense of when their time is coming. So, they don't have that sense when it comes to like an accident, like how Buzz passed away when he was killed by a car, but they do when they get older.
Okay. So they can kind of see it coming down the road when they start to feel bad, I guess. So I guess eating, like not eating as much and not being as active, those are like signs that they're trying to give you to let you know that the time is coming.
Yeah, those are two signs. When they stop engaging with you, when they stop playing, when they stop doing the same things that they used to do. So I'll give you an example. In my Pets in the Afterlife 3 book, two of our dogs passed. Dolly, who was a Weimaraner, and Franklin, who was a Dachshund. Both of them one of them was 16, one of them was almost 16. Franklin was basically a case that in study of that. Franklin always liked to be around us. Franklin was very food driven. So at the end, when he was battling a slipped disc and he was on 2 different pain medications and he awakened every 3 hours and he would cry, and we knew it was time. He could barely walk. We would carry him into the TV room with us every night after dinner to watch some TV and relax. And he would actually find the strength to get up and walk into the kitchen and sit in his bed by himself. So he would isolate himself. And that really is a sign that he really was tired and he wanted to go.
Right. Now, do the pets understand how hard of a decision that is for human beings? Like, have you actually had a conversation and asked either your pets or someone else's, like, if they understood the the emotional trauma that puts somebody through when they're trying to decide on whether to go ahead and do euthanasia on a family pet?
Sure, they do. They absolutely can read our emotions. So emotions are basically an energy. And just like they know when we're happy, when we're sad, when we're angry, they go in the other room. When we're depressed or when we're sick, they come to us. So they read that emotional energy. And they can sense when we're stressed. They know that I hear this all the time from pets on the other side. They appreciate the courage that it takes for us to help them cross over because they know how sad and conflicted we are. And they always say thank you.
Yeah.
For finding that.
Yeah. There's actually, I actually have believe it or not, I have a story that's right along the lines of that. I had a Cocker Spaniel about, she passed away in 2013. Excuse me. And she, it was very quick. It was over a weekend. She was fine. We came back from dinner. My wife and I came back from dinner, and she wasn't. We took her to UPenn Hospital over in Philadelphia, and within 2 days, she was literally like, I went there Sunday, and she couldn't move. She was laying on the floor. They have like little rooms you go into and you sit with the pets at the end or toward the end, and she couldn't move. She couldn't lift her head, couldn't do anything. She just laid there breathing, and they told me like all these different things that were wrong with her. She had neurological issues in her head, and she had other issues. They couldn't do an operation on one part of her because it would cause damage in another part. It was just like a catch-22. You could, damned if you do, damned if you don't. And it was crushing to me. And I sat there with her for a really long time. And finally, the nurse, after she explained all this, I said, okay. I said, I agreed to put her down. And the nurse left the room to go get the shot, the medication. And her name was Crimpet. And Crimpet hadn't gotten up, hadn't moved since she put her in the room. And she sat up, put her head up, and looked straight at me. And in my head, I heard the words, "Thank you." And she laid back down again. And then maybe 10 minutes later, they brought in the medication, and they set her up, and I was holding her while they put her down. But it was, I understand. Like, that was the only time I really can say that I truly understand what you mean when you say it's just kind of in your head. And it's, and I try and explain that to people, and I know I sound crazy when I'm saying it because, well, maybe not to you, but I mean, I'm sure to other people, okay. Like, because they would think what I normally would think, like, oh, you wanted to validate your decision, and so you wanted to, but it really wasn't that. It just, I wasn't thinking about anything. My mind was really blank at the time. I was so upset. And it just popped in my head, like a neon sign, only verbally. And then she laid back down. So yeah, so I completely understand what you mean when you say that. And that was one instance that I've had that, where that happened. So
that's actually a really good example of what a lot of people deal with when their pet knows that they're going to help them cross over. Because the same thing happened to our dog Sprite in 2013. He was 16 and a half years old. And he couldn't walk. He had kidney failure. He had bad heart murmur. He was going deaf. And a tumor burst in his nose the night before we had to help him cross. But I begged the ER to let me take him home that night after they stemmed the bleeding. And they did. They let me take him home for 6 hours, and then we brought him the next day. But so he wasn't eating. He hadn't eaten for 2 days. And when we took him to the vet, and I told him as we were going, we said, Sprite, we're going to help you cross over. And I explained who would be there, people that he knew that had passed from here. I have to tell you, Rick, he ate 2 entire big treats. He was so happy to know that we had found the courage to help him cross over. And a lot of people will say, my dog was energetic when I was taking them to the vet to help them cross over, and it made me feel even more guilty.
Right.
Well, the dog, please acknowledge that the dog is understanding that you have found the courage to do what needed to be done, and don't feel guilty at all. Feel pleased that the dog acknowledges that.
Yeah. I've had that happen too, where they've been down and they kind of made a little bit of a comeback, and then went down for good. So it's rough, and it's a fine line to walk, because you one of the things my wife and I had mentioned to you that we had lost a couple of pets last year as well, in the early summer, and like within 2 weeks of each other. Excuse me. And with each one, it was a situation where it's a fine line when you walk, where you don't want to take away time that they have when they seem like that they're still getting any kind of joy out of their life. But at the same time, you don't want to wait too long that you're putting them in pain and distress that's unnecessary. So it's rough, and it's it's just kind of one of those things where you try and make the best call you can. But have the pets that you've spoken with, have they addressed that specific issue where maybe I don't even know, like, have they mentioned that at all, where people have held on too long, and they kind of do they have any kind of animosity towards that, or do they understand that it was just out of love?
They all understand that it was truly out of love. So there's no hard feelings at all from pets on the other side. They want to stay with us as much as we want them to stay with us. So, and I went through that with our dog Dolly, who just passed in October. She was almost 16 years old. That's old for a 70-pound Weimaraner. Mm-hmm. And in the last entire year of her life, she was wearing a diaper because she was incontinent with, number 1 and 2. And I changed her diaper several times a day. And I knew she was hanging on for me because she was my baby. I doted on her. I rescued her from an animal rescue as a puppy. Mm. And I was devastated. But she stayed as long as she could. And within 24 hours, she also had a spinal disc that slipped and rendered her incapable of walking. And she, when that happened, when she first fell, I knew it. She looked at me and I said, okay, I'm going to help you cross.
Right.
Killed me.
Right.
But she's around. She has a whole chapter in that book, Pets 3, because she's been so active.
Yeah, I was going to mention that next is that your book, Pets in the Afterlife 3, a lot of that book has to do with pet visitations and signs that they give you that they're still around. So one of the things you mentioned in the book I found very interesting was that pets don't always go directly to you. Sometimes they would go to friends and relatives of their owner, or
Yes.
their dad, their mom, whoever, however you want to phrase that. Why would that be?
Usually because once a pet passes and we're grieving them very deeply, grief blocks all signs from the other side. So pets have to find some creative way to get the message that to their pet parent, that they are still very much around. So in the instance of Dolly, and Buzz, my dog Buzz, did the same exact thing. Dolly brought another dog that resembled her to a friend of mine in Massachusetts the day after Dolly passed. My friend was walking in her neighborhood. She's lived there for many, many years. She's gone on the same walk every night for many, many years. Never have seen a Weimaraner. After Dolly passed, she texted me. She wanted to check in with me and make sure I'm okay. She asked me if I saw any signs from Dolly. Out from the woods runs a Weimaraner. Stops, full stop right in front of her face.
Jeez.
And she was totally astounded. And she stood there kind of dumbfounded, and then she realized this is a sign from Dolly. And then the Weimaraner turned around and ran back in the woods. And I gotta tell you, Rick, same thing happened in 2005 after Buzz passed. My friend Lisa, who lives in Maine, I think within a week or two, I was destroyed after Buzz was killed by the car. Lisa was out running. She lived there for many, many years. Out of the woods, ran a Weimaraner that she had never seen before. Stopped in front of her. Let her pet the Weimaraner. Now, here's the really freaky part. Spirits can really help manipulate all kinds of things. When she looked at that tag of that dog, that Weimaraner, the dog's name was Buzzy.
Oh, jeez.
It's Buzz with a Y.
Wow.
And she turned the tag over, and the owner's name was Rob G. Same as mine.
Get out. Wow.
No such thing as a coincidence when it comes to spirit.
That's crazy. I was about to. I mean, before you said all that, I was going to say Weimaraners aren't exactly common dogs to have running around either.
No.
But especially with all that stuff.
Yeah. Wow. And it's what's strange about that mostly is that both of these women have lived there for years and they've never seen a Weimaraner in their neighborhoods.
Yeah. That's crazy. Wow.
Yeah.
So
that's how it works.
So is there anything that we can do to increase the likelihood of getting a visitation from a pet? Like if we have lost a pet and we want to have them come and visit and let us know they're there, is there something that we can do to enhance the odds of that?
Sure. There are a number of things. So the first thing, the easiest way for them to communicate with you is to come into your dreams. That's because our logical minds are asleep, and it's being awake, and our logical minds function, and we always tend to ignore coincidences. And when it comes to spirit giving messages, there are no such thing as coincidences. So ask them to come into your dreams before you go to sleep. Second thing you need to know is that if you have multiple pets on the other side, it all depends on their personality. The ones that are more aggressive or assertive or affectionate are going to be the ones that come through first. The other ones who tended to be quiet in the background, they will not. They'll let the assertive ones speak for them. So don't be disappointed if you've lost 3 dogs and one of them was quiet and you don't ever sense anything from them. It doesn't mean he's not there.
Right.
It just means he's letting the other ones do the talking.
Right.
So we talked about physical signs. They can also manipulate things in nature, like birds and butterflies and squirrels, but they have to behave oddly. They have to behave really oddly. They have to be doing the odd thing when you're thinking about them, or on a birthday, anniversary, or holiday.
Oh, okay.
So, I caution everybody that not everything is a sign. Not every time you see a butterfly, it's not a sign from your loved one.
Right.
That's
right.
crazy. They have to behave erratically. So one example is when my dog Sprite passed away in 2013. The next day we had our other dogs outside, and a butterfly flew in the yard, and the butterfly actually circled around the dogs, and it circled around the dogs for about 15 or 20 minutes. Now that's really unusual for a butterfly to do that.
Right.
And secondly, if you have dachshunds, they will chase anything. We had 2 dachshunds who didn't touch the butterfly. So that became, I mean, in my book, Pets in the Afterlife 1, I have a close-up picture of a butterfly that I took with the my cell phone camera, which is also unusual because they just don't sit. So that became known as Sprite's butterfly. A couple of years later, I was driving to work, didn't have any idea what day it was, wasn't even thinking about it. A yellow and black butterfly came right up the windshield, and I thought, oh my gosh, that's Sprite. And I thought, is it really? And then I remembered it was the anniversary of his passing.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah. So is remembering birthdays and anniversaries of their passing and things like that, even if it's just mentally in your own head or posting something on a social media account or something to get people, to other people to recognize it, is that something that would perhaps help them to contact you or know that you still care and so forth?
Well, anybody that knows me knows that I still care about all of my dogs.
Yeah,
they'll always contact me. But yeah, and so one of the ways that you can help work through your grief is something I did, and that is really use social media. Sometimes people want to be shy about it. They don't want to, post that one of their favorite pets passed or whatever. But to be honest with you, when we are grieving, we need support. Whether it's just a hello, or we feel your pain, or if you want to talk to somebody, I'm here. So social media is one way that people can do that. In the Pets in the Afterlife 3 book, I actually consulted a good friend of mine who's a medical psychologist, and he helped write a chapter on how to deal with grief. And he gave 11 ways to cope with grief. And I added 4 more of my own. So that's how this book differs from the other 2 books on Pets in the Afterlife. This one really addresses how to cope with your grief, plus gives you all the different ways that pets communicate.
Right.
So there's that.
So does this grief, is it felt by other animals in the house too, do you think?
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a good point. So you will notice if you have other pets in the house, like you do,
yeah.
They will sense the loss. They will behave differently. They'll be depressed. They'll be lethargic. At first they'll go looking for the pet that passed. Now, when Dolly passed, we were able to have someone come to the backyard and help her cross over. So we had our other 2 dogs come out and stand there and watch what happened. So, and they went up and they got to sniff her afterward, and they knew what happened. Mm-hmm. So it made it easier for them, because otherwise they don't understand when you take a pet to a vet. And we had to do that with Franklin because COVID had just hit.
Right.
So we had to take him to the vet. So they do. And so they need more attention.
Yeah. Our oldest Bella, she passed, one of the animals we had passed last spring, or end of spring, early summer. And one of our cats, Jojo, she was constantly messing with Bella. We used to say it was her dog. So you're sitting with your dog again. And Bella would kind of just, she was a little annoyed by it, but she would not leave her alone. And after Bella passed, and this cat she's about 8 now. For the first 7.5 years of her life, if she wasn't right in front of you, she was hiding somewhere in the house. So you couldn't find her most of the time, unless it was time to eat or whatever. When Bella passed, she immediately changed her personality. She became very, very affectionate with my wife and I. She sits with us now. She lays on top of us. She walks around the floor meowing at us for attention. It's literally a night and day change of personality, and it just started after Bella passed away. So I can imagine that was probably a situation where she was. We actually had an animal communicator at one point that told us that the 2 of them were somehow brothers in another life or something. They were like, I forget if it was dogs or cats, but they were brothers and that's why they were so close. Or well, JoJo was close to Bella. I guess Bella was close to her too, but she was still kind of like, leave me alone kind of thing. but yeah, it's been amazing, like the last 6 months without Bella, how much this cat's personality has changed.
Yeah, they really do. They try to process the grief the same way. And one of the things in all three books that I have is I use a lot of science as the basis of how I explain things.
Mm-hmm.
So Dr. Stanley Coren is someone who's written a couple of books called The Intelligence of Dogs and How Dogs Think. And he did a lot of studies on how they think. And how they behave. So they were, there's intellectual learning, there's instinctual learning, there's learning routines and so forth. There's learning language, there's learning facial signs indicate different things, different barks and different postures and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
So dogs learn on all those different levels, and same thing with cats. But he studied dogs. Then there's another scientific aspect that I focus on a lot because I get this question sometimes, and that is, do animals have souls? Well, I actually, now I laugh at that question because it's just ridiculous.
Right.
Yes, every living thing has a soul, and the soul is the energy within us coupled with our memories and our personality and our knowledge. And when we pass, we choose to stay here earthbound, and I call that a ghost, or we cross over and we, go to the other side. And that's what I call a spirit, because I really do think that there's a distinction between the earthbound entities and the ones that cross over, because earthbounds are fixed in location of their choosing, and spirits can go anywhere, anytime, any place.
Right.
The other aspect of that study, one of the studies that I include in the book, is a gentleman named Gregory Burns from Emory University who did MRIs on dogs. And he proved, looking at dogs' brains and their reactions to their pet parent, that they have the same exact emotional response in their brains that humans do when they show love for another.
Mm-hmm. Right. Right. And I think it was they're the emotional age of like a 3 to 5 year old or something I saw.
Yes. Yeah. And that's another thing that's kind of interesting too. And that kind of fits in with the grief that we experience, because no matter how old our dog gets, we'll always look at them as a 3 to 5 year old child.
Right. Right. Yeah. Because
that makes it harder to deal with their passing.
Yeah. It's like losing your child no matter how old they get. So do you, and I'm asking this for a specific reason, but do you believe that dogs, I know that they can take commands. I mean, obviously, since time immemorial, people have been teaching dogs verbal commands. But do you believe that dogs can actually read intention? And I ask this because I've had situations where I have, and I don't even do this consciously, but I'll say something, and I don't even have to be facing the dog, and I'll say something, and the dog will react as if it heard me, understood, and did what I asked. It's the weirdest thing, and afterwards I'll kind of look and go, my God. like it's like talking to a person sometimes. It's really, really bizarre.
Yeah, they absolutely do. They have a tremendous sense of what we're thinking, what we want. They go by scent and by body language, and whether or not we're nervous or a whole bunch of factors. And I also have to keep reminding myself. I just read a book about how scent rules an animal, and that we can't even we can't even relate to.
Mm-hmm.
They have like 300 million scent receptors, and we have 5 million, something like that.
Okay.
So they can smell, fear or anger, or because I think it's pheromones that
right.
That they're detecting.
Interesting. So have you ever heard of a situation where living animals now, have been basically taken over for a brief time by deceased animals? They start acting in a way that's not common for them, but was common for the animal that had passed away.
So I have an answer for that. And this was actually one of the very first pet readings I did that was outside of my dog Buzz. The answer to that is they're not really taken over. They're kind of influenced. Okay. So back in 2006, a year after my dog Buzz passed, I was doing an event with Barb Mallon, who's a medium in Virginia. And there was a crowd of people, like 45 people there. And a little dog, a little beige chihuahua, came to me, and I heard him, and I saw him in my mind. And his name was Chico. And I will never forget Chico because he was the first one outside of Buzz. And he said, "My name's Chico, and I am here for one of the women here." And I said, "Well, there's." I'm talking to myself up front, in this event, and I'm like, "Okay, there's 45 people here. Who are you with?" And he said, "I will show you." And I thought, okay. So at the break, people were filing out to use the bathroom or get some refreshments. And he said, "Her." So I stopped a woman who had long brown hair, and I said, "Excuse me, do you know a small chihuahua named Chico?" And she stopped and she said, "That's my grandmother's dog that just passed away." And she said, "What are you saying? Is he here?" And I said, "Yes, he's here." And she says, "Well, what does he want?" And I said, "Well, he's telling me that you have a large, dark colored dog, like a black dog. And he is training your dog to be a better dog. He is training your dog to have some better habits." And she said, "I have noticed after Chico passed that my dog is behaving differently and better. And I couldn't figure out what happened because they didn't see each other all the time." And I said, "Well, he's there to train your dog." And that's what happens after people lose a pet. Their pet will come back in spirit, and they will help train the new dog to have a habit or two that they had when they were alive.
Does it ever go the other way and they train them to be disruptive and a pain in the ass?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I didn't say a good habit.
Yeah.
Any habit.
Yeah. The reason I ask that question is I've seen both sides of that equation in our when you have so many pets, when you have the number of pets we have, you pretty much see everything over the course of time. And yeah, Taryn and I, my wife, we talk about this all the time. When Bella passed, our other dog started acting like her.
The toilet paper rollers or whatever.
So are there some breeds of dogs or cats that are easier to communicate with, or does it not matter?
It really doesn't matter. It's really all based on the personality.
Okay.
So yeah, and it depends on if they want to talk. There are people on the other side all the time that just don't want to talk. And I mentioned the stronger personality comes through. So I use this as an example with humans because when my dad passed in 2008, he came through to me a lot. Mm-hmm. After my mom passed in 2013, I don't hear from my dad anymore because in life, my Italian mother was always the one that did all the talking. Right. And my dad, who was Irish, he would stand back and just be quiet and let her do all the talking. And now he's doing that in spirit too. Okay. So pets do the same thing.
Cool. So do pets? It's good to know. It's good information to know. Do pets, either living or even deceased pets, do they have the ability to heal us, whether it's emotionally or maybe even physically?
Well, they can certainly help with that. They can't heal us. So, but per se, not entirely. So if someone, if we're battling cancer or heart disease or something, they can't help with that, but they can make us feel more comfortable by making us feel their presence. Like whether you feel like a pressure against your legs when you're sleeping at night, mm-hmm. and you sense that your dog or cat is right there. Mm-hmm. So they can do that. They can offer, just like they can do in the physical,
right?
They do in spirit. They can offer that same kind of comfort.
Okay. And I know, like I mentioned in our intro here, I know that you are a huge advocate of animal rescue, and my wife and I have done animal rescue. That's where most of our animals come from. We foster failed mm-hmm. almost every one. And you know, we got to a point where we couldn't take any more. You know, our house is only so big, but we still get these messages and postings on social media from animal shelters and ACT in Philadelphia, which is a kill shelter with, you know, time stamped for such and such a time. And it's, you know, it's heartbreaking to see that stuff and not be able to help, other than to maybe share it and hope that somebody out there will see it and help. And we've been to those places to get a couple of our dogs, and I mean the cages are just all over the place, and you just, you know, it kills you to know that a lot of those dogs aren't going to make it out of there. And I know that you mentioned earlier that every animal has a purpose, but it seems hard to reconcile a dog that was born and bred on the streets of say, in this case, Philadelphia, and they get thrown into this kill shelter and they get put down at a year old because they need room. You know, what is the purpose there? Do you know what I'm saying? Like, have you ever come across a situation where you've gotten any kind of an answer on that?
No, I haven't really. But my first thought is that in some way, someone connected to that dog for a short period of time and never forgot that dog, and then realized what happened to them. And that may have changed their mind and motivated them to do something in a positive way to make sure that doesn't happen.
Mm. Yeah. It always strikes me as, you know, you look at all these the cages and the posts that come through, and you just think, man, it's just such a waste and such a shame, and you know, it's crushing to see that, and to know that. And then you get these posts on Facebook where they say, oh, a year ago, 5 years ago, and I see all the posts that I shared of all these animals, and I wonder, geez, did they actually make it out, or have they been gone for 3 years, 5 years? You know, it's rough. It's rough. You do what you can do. But
well, you are going to have a whole menagerie on the other side waiting for you. I'll tell you that.
I think we probably already do.
Yeah,
it's one of those things where, we're eventually we'll have a larger one, but yeah, we're going to have quite the group. So Rob, I know your books are on Amazon, but is there anywhere else that people could find your books or any of your other works? Anything else that you would want to promote and let people know about?
Well, I do maintain a blog or a website, and I put something up there it seems like every other day. I initially was going to do it once a week, but you know, I've been doing this now 11 years, so I find things to talk about all the time. So I read about pets or people, ghosts, earthbound ghosts or spirits, and they can go to petspirits.com. That reroutes them, or robgutro.com. And of course I have a presence on Facebook and Twitter and YouTube, and you know, I'm all over the place like an epidemic. I'm everywhere. But Amazon is the place they can get my books in paperback and ebook.
Okay. And if anybody wanted to have a reading done, are you available for that?
So I've been doing readings. So I've been doing readings for free for about 11 years, and it got to be overwhelming. The number of people that have asked me from all over the world has been crazy. And, you know, I work a full-time job as a scientist, and I try to find time on the weekend for my family and my dogs and you know, exercising and all that. So I just started in January asking people if they would pay $10 through PayPal and email me a picture of their dog or cat, whatever, and the name of the pet and any questions they may have, so I can connect with them. And then I give them a short email reading. And I only do it on weekends. So if anybody wants a reading, please, you know, don't keep emailing me 5-6 times during the week, because I can't, can't do it during the week.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. Well, it sounds like you've, you know, you definitely have had quite a few experiences, and you know, I can tell from personal experience that you did a reading for us, and it was very interesting, to say the least. So, you know,
I hope you can make sense out of it.
We did most of it. We did. Some of the stuff you mentioned, we're still kind of trying to figure out, but that's kind of the way it goes. I guess sometimes you figure it out later on, as you have said a few times. So we're still in the process of trying to do that.
Yeah, so that's a good point to bring up too. Is that if you don't understand something in a reading, you may understand it later. In Pets 3, I did a reading for a lab who passed, a lab named Blake, and Blake gave his dad. Well, he gave me the number 512. And I told his dad that's a very important number related to Blake and something very personal, either tied to Blake or tied to you. And at the time, I think it was July, I did the reading. His dad, David, said, I have no idea what that means. And I said, well, over time, you may. It could be a time, could be a date, could be an address. I have no idea what it is. And then the next January, he wrote me and he said, you may not remember me, but my name is David. You did a reading for Blake, gave me the number 512. And he said, long story short, I figured out what it is. He said 512. I'm a doctor, and I was in with a patient, and my patient had a collapsed lung. I think it's called pneumothorax or something. And he said, I was looking at his chart, and it said, and the medical code was 512. So I wrote that down. And he said, then I realized the condition that Blake had as he passed was a collapsed lung.
Oh, wow.
It would have been coded 512.
Wow.
And he said, he was astounded. And he said, so here I am writing you in January after you give me a reading in July to tell you that I finally figured out what that number means.
Very interesting. Very interesting. And these, again, these stories, you have plenty of them in your books. And, I definitely encourage anybody who's interested to pick a few of them up and take a look at them, because there's all kinds of stories like this in Rob's books, and they're very interesting and very informative and very helpful to anybody who has who's going through the process of losing a pet. So Rob, I want to thank you very much for taking time out of your day to come and talk to us here. And again, I would love to have you back on the show and talk some more about either pets, or we didn't even touch on your mediumistic work with human beings or anything like that. So if you wanted to come back on and touch on that, I'd be more than happy to have you on.
I would love to. So out of my 8 books, Rick, 3 are about pets and 5 are about people.
There we go.
Ghosts or spirits.
So we have material.
Yeah.
We have plenty of material. All right, Rob, I want to thank you again. Thank you again, and you have a great night. All right, and we'll talk to you soon.
Sounds good. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night. All right, that was Rob Gutro. He is a medium and a scientist, and it's interesting that he did mention that he tries to actually address the science behind his work, his mediumistic work, which not everybody has the ability to do because they don't have that knowledge, and not everybody tries to do because they don't try. They just go with the mediumistic stuff, and it's a harder sell to skeptics who don't hear a why behind it. And I think Rob tries to put a little bit of that scientific why behind the readings, and that resonates. It resonates with people who don't normally buy into mediumistic readings. For example, Mr. Mike. What do you think about all this, Mr. Skeptic Mike?
Skeptic Mike. I think we've discussed it before. I'm not completely sold but this is with everything. Completely sold on the afterlife talking, but that goes personal with me because of my dad, and he was one of those guys that, we hear it all the time. Somebody would say, if I pass on, I'm coming back to haunt you. Like, my dad was a very big goofy person like that, and would tell us all the time. So it kind of goes over to animals. But the one thing that I do, I've stated on the show before, that animal instinct and that ability to have that sixth sense of animals is an uncanny thing. The ability to know when something's wrong with a human being even before it happens, to know that something's wrong with the universe, with the world before it happens, to be able to have that sensory about them and that natural instinct.
Right.
To start getting excited when their owner is a block down the road coming home, is something really, really weird that has never been able to be explained. So that avenue of animals and dogs and cats and all that kind of stuff is really interesting and kind of paranormal to an extent of like we just don't understand it. It's something odd, and it's something that we ourselves have we tapped into it?
Right.
Have we not? Have we shut it off with the way that we've evolved, and only certain individuals are able to tap into it, and that's where we get individuals like Rob, like Gene. It does make me question it when you take it from that perspective, going from an animalistic perspective. So,
right.
I mean, that's what I get out of the stories that he tells, and the thing where you said where like you heard "thank you" in your head.
Mm-hmm.
That kind of stuff kind of gives me goosebumps. So that's where I kind of buy into the whole idea. And I mean, Rob's an amazing guy and so many experiences, and that feeling of love you have for an animal like a family member definitely speaks into that as well.
Yeah, and I think it speaks to the connection you have with your pets. It's because it's not. It's a different connection than you have with people and almost any people, because there's going to be some sort of I don't want to say judgment, but some sort of agenda or I think people sometimes think that people are more deceptive than animals, or I'm not sure if I'm saying this the right way, but it's more pure.
It's more pure because they don't understand. Animals don't understand. And I do not say this to be disrespectful, but the carny aspect of things, putting on a show for people. And I say that because there have been a lot of people that are deceptive, that do it for the money. That's across the board in any industry, in any kind of way of doing show. I'm doing quotation showmanship. When you take animals, when you bring animals into the mix, they have no ulterior motive.
Right.
So for somebody like me that's skeptic, that helps me to paint the dotted lines. Does that make make sense? Like somebody who will sit down and go, prove it to me. How are you going to prove this to me?
Right.
Well, when a dog isn't trying to prove anything. Dog is just being a dog, or an animal is just being an animal. So then you're able to make that dotted line to, okay, well then that is a possibility.
Right, like you say, there's no ulterior motive. There's
right.
there's no reason for deception. There's none of that stuff present. So if something happens, and that dog, like you say, give an example of getting up when the owner is on his way home. That happened to me when I was I mentioned Crimpet, but I had two dogs for years, Crimpet and Kira, Beagle and a Cocker Spaniel, and my ex-wife, she was around for the first part of their lives, and she would tell me that the dogs would get up and start hopping around on the couch at around 5 o'clock every day, except for the days when I went to the gym after work, in which case they would not get up and start hopping around until about an hour later, which is about when I would get done at the gym and start coming home. Yeah. So, I mean, how do you explain that?
Yeah, and you really can't. And I don't think human beings, unless we start really tapping into the brain of every creature on Earth, are ever going to be able to explain it fully. It's just one of those things. It's a natural Mother Nature, and this is why we've talked about my acceptance more of Wiccan than any other, quote, religion known to man, because that does speak to the earth, the sun, the animals, the ground, and everything being connected, because that's what it is. It's that animal instinct. It's that Mother Nature instinct that allows them to do it. Well, it's something that is amazing.
Yeah.
And I can already hear my mother hitting me up after the show going, so you're getting a dog, right? No, Mom, I'm not getting a dog.
We'll work on him. We'll work on him, Mom. All right, so we're going to wrap things up for the evening, but I do want to thank Rob Gutro for coming on and sharing his time with us, and we will post all of his links to all of his social media and links to his books on Amazon on our show notes. So look for that, and we will release our podcast as usual sometime this weekend. The video version should be up right now on social media. You can get that on our Facebook page. We'll have it on our Twitter page. We'll have it on Toxic's YouTube page. So you can find it just about anywhere if you look on either Toxic or Paradelphia's social media. All right, so with that in mind, for our production crew, I am Rick Pruitt. Again, thanks to Rob Gutro, and we are Paradelphia, and we are out of here.